This week's story, we're going to be telling an older Iowa story about the Scalped Man. And the Scalped Man, four brothers lived together in a lodge, and the three brothers would go hunting, and they would leave the youngest one at home to take care of the lodge. And one time they left the youngest brother home to take care of the lodge, and as he was staying there, a huge bird landed out by the water. And he decided to go and try to shoot the bird, and he went and he took all of his arrows and shot them at the bird, and every one of them missed. And in the lodge, his brother had a sacred arrow, and he ran back into the lodge and got that sacred arrow, and he shot at the bird, and it hit, but it only wounded the bird. So he went after the bird, and it would have to land every so often. And so he followed it, and night fell, and he made it to a village. And on the outskirts of the village was an older grandma, and he said, "Can I spend the night here with you?" And she said, "Yeah." She said, but she took him to the chief's lodge and said, "This young man has come here to marry your daughter." And the chief accepted him as a son-in-law, and he married her daughter. But at the end of the night, he said, "I have to go on, I have to continue my mission." And he went on and followed the bird. And on the second night, he came to another village, and another old lady at the end of the village, and she did the same thing, took him to the chief. And he married his daughter again, and so he had a second wife. And this happened for 2 more nights, and he married the chief's daughter in each village. And on the 4th night, he followed the bird up to a cave. And when he went into the cave, there was an old man whose head was raw, and he'd been scalped. And there was nothing but tufts of hair on the side of his head. And he said, "Young man, I'm the one who sent the bird for you. I needed you to come here to help me." He said, "Across that river is a village, and they've taken my scalp. And they have my scalp up on a pole," he said. "And they dance around it every day, and then they let their son wear it, because when he has headaches, they play ball, and he goes and he puts on my scalp, and they play ball, play shinny around, and let him wear my scalp," he said, "and I want you to get my scalp back for me." And so the boy said, all right, I'll go do it." So that day he went down, and he went across the water, and he saw the chief's son sitting there on the water, and he said, "Hey, what's that thing up on that pole?" He said, "Oh," he said, "that's a scalp," he said. "And he said, we took from an enemy, and whenever I have headaches, they play shinny and make me feel better." And he said, "Is that right?" He said. So he killed him right there, and he took his skin and put it on.
God.
And he went into the village looking ill, and went to the chief. He said, "Father, I don't feel well." He said, "I need you to play the sacred ball and make me feel better, and I'll take that scalp and put it on." And so the father said yes, and he sent the crier out and brought them in from the town to play ball to make his son feel better. And he brought the scalp down and put it on his head. And when he did, he took that ball and he threw it as hard as he could, so they all had to run. And when they did, he took off with the scalp and went across the water. And he took it back to the old man up in the cave, and the man said, "Soak the scalp in water," he said, "hot water, and then take it and throw it at me." And he did. He soaked it in water, and he took it and he threw it at him, and it went right back on his head, and he was healed. And he said, "Since you've done this for me, you have 4 wives." He said, "I'm going to take you." He said, "Give you some gifts," and he wrapped them up. He took some things and wrapped them up in different hides. And he said, "Take these back to your villages and give them to your families, give them to your father-in-laws." So he did. He took those, and he went down to his villages. And as he went to his villages, he gave them to the first father-in-law. And he said, "Be careful when you unwrap these." And so the father-in-law called a Stinky, and Stinky came excited and straddled that thing and cut it open, and it threw him into the air. There were so many things into there. And there were things for everybody in the village, and the father-in-law was pleased, and he said, "Take your wife," and he did. So he started home, and he stopped in each village, and he gave his gifts, and he took his wives and headed back to his home. So he took his 4 wives home, and he was pleased, and he went back to his brothers. And so when he got home, he gave each of them one of his wives, except he kept the first wife for himself because she was the prettiest. But his brothers weren't happy. They were jealous because she was the prettiest wife, and they grumbled and they were angry, and so they decided to plot against him. So they said, "Brother, let's go hunting." And they went hunting, and when they went hunting, they killed him. And they cut off his head. So they went back home, and they pretended like nothing had happened, and they said, "Let's tell stories to amuse our sister-in-law so she doesn't worry." And they told stories about going hunting with their brother, and that night, while they were telling stories, his head rolled in because he had been gained on this vision. He gained good medicine. And he went to his wife and he said, "They killed me while I was out, so I want you to tell them a story and tell them about 3 jealous brothers killing their brother for his wife." And she told the story. And then he, she finished telling the story, he used his medicine and he ate up the brothers and their wives. And so she wrapped him up, in a leather bag, and put him on his thing and said, "Let's go back to your people." So she took him and she went back to her family, and she took him back. And so she kept him with her, and she treasured him as her husband, even though he was just a head, because he had big medicine. He could still go out and hunt for her, even as a head, and bring her deer meat. And she took him home and hid him under her bed. And his mother-in-law found him under there and pulled him out. And his brother-in-laws thought it was funny and rolled him around and played with him. And the girl came home and found it, and she was upset and cleaned him up and put him back. But he was upset, so he ate up all his brother-in-laws. And every night he'd eat one more of the people until there was no one left. And then I came home.
Wow, that is an amazing story. Is there if you can, give them your your email address one more time?
My email address is ohnosetadpoles, ohnosetadpoles @gmail.com.
Muddo and a hoe.